right, today I've come to Winchester, county town of Hampshire, and formerly the capital of all England, and home of Alfred the Great. The Romans were the first founders of Winchester, calling the town Venta Belgica, and that's where the modern name of Winchester comes from. Venta became Win, and Chester is a Saxon word meaning Roman town or Roman fort. When the Romans left, it was abandoned for about a century and was then reclaimed by the Anglo-Saxons in the 5th and 6th centuries. Now, the Anglo-Saxons didn't have capitals like we would understand them. The king and his court moved around the country to wherever it was needed. However, Winchester was the principal town in Wessex. It was the largest, it had the most important cathedral, and it was where the kings came to be crowned. What's known as the Great Heathen Army invaded England in the 1170s and took over most of the north and centre of England, leaving only Wessex as the last free Anglo-Saxon kingdom. Alfred the Great capitalised on this as King of Wessex and created the Kingdom of England by reconquering Mercia, Kent, East Anglia, and his son would then conquer the rest of England back under Anglo-Saxon control. Because of their history as the kings of Wessex, Winchester remained one of the most important towns in their rule, even as their court moved around the country and often settled in other important cities like London. And this is Winchester Cathedral. Viewers with good memories may remember that the Bishop of Winchester also owned Farnham Keep in the town of Farnham. They were a powerful part of the medieval aristocracy. These caskets up at the top here are the caskets made for the kings of Wessex and the kings of England that were interred here in the cathedral. They are beautiful works of art. Unfortunately, during the Reformation, the king's men came in, burst in, they cracked open the caskets, strew the bones all over the place, and so we don't know now which king is which, or even if each complete skeleton is the same skeleton. But that's where they lie still. The hope is that DNA testing will allow them to confirm that each skeleton is complete, and so even though we don't know which skeleton is which, they won't be jumbled up anymore. This is down in the crypts beneath the cathedral. This would have originally been intended for burials, but due to the very high water table, it's completely unusable for that purpose, and you can see the water is here even now. This is the Chapel of the Holy Sepulchre, designed to look like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. This is medieval painting that was plastered over and then carefully rediscovered. In the 14th century, the cathedral was remodelled to suit the Gothic style, but here in this wing you can see the original Romanesque architecture hadn't been replaced. That's what the whole of the cathedral would have looked like, this heavy, dark stone. Dark because not much light could get through, but if you contrast it with the Gothic remoulding, so much more light gets into the cathedral when it's like this. The cathedral is fairly unusual in England for maintaining so many of these individual chapels dedicated to particular people. Many of these were smashed to pieces in other cathedrals during the Reformation. Winchester Cathedral has the longest nave of any cathedral in Europe. And this is the memorial to Jane Austen, who is buried in this cathedral. She came to Winchester to see a doctor about her illness, but unfortunately there was no treatment available, and she died in the city and was buried here. The monument is quite interesting because it makes no mention of her as an author, only as an individual, talking about her qualities of kindness and the sweetness of her temperament, and similar qualities that is, in my opinion, very personal. But later on, her brother funded another memorial, which is here, and mentions her career as a writer. But personally, I am quite interested in the personal notes in her original monument. The great tragedy of Jane Austen's death is that she died here in Winchester, quite far away from her friends and family, and so her funeral was very poorly attended. And in those days it was traditional for women not to attend funerals, only for men, which meant that Jane Austen's sister, the only close relative she had here in Winchester, also did not attend. I believe only 11 people came to her funeral, which is just tragic for such a huge stature of an individual in English literature, and as a person who is well remembered by everyone she met in life. Winchester was still a vital city to control after the Norman conquest, and William the Conqueror funded the complete rebuild of Winchester Cathedral to help facilitate his rule in this area. The bishops of Winchester would continue to be one of the most powerful men in the realm all the way through the Middle Ages. And it was only towards the end of the Middle Ages, in the 14th and 15th century, that Winchester waned in power. These are the ruins of William the Conqueror's Winchester Castle, which was completely destroyed, and the only remains of which are the Great Hall. The Great Hall is a beautifully well-maintained medieval hall fit for a king, but its most striking feature is not the hall or its state of repair, it's this massive round table. When it was discovered in the 13 and 1400s, they thought it really was King Alfred's table. We now know it isn't. It's definitely nowhere near that old, but people thought that it was. And Henry VII, who didn't have a very good claim to the throne at all, painted it to look like it definitely was Arthur's, and he used it to help strengthen his rule. It's been hanging in this great hall for about 150 years now, and has been in Winchester since it was rediscovered in the 1500s. The last gasp of royal power in Winchester is this wall. Charles II had commissioned a 120-room royal palace be built here in the centre of Winchester, and wanted to make Winchester a royal city. Unfortunately, he never was able to achieve that dream, and this wall is all that's left of that palace. This was the last time that anyone entertained the possibility of making Winchester a massive capital city again.